Hey, Charlie, how are you today? Thank you so much for coming on the show.
I'm good, thanks. Thank you for having me. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really well. I'm really excited to talk to you. So, before we dive into everything lucid dreaming, why we should do it, how we can do it, all of that stuff, will you tell us a little bit about your story and your background?
Hmm. Um, so I got into lucid dreaming. Well, the kind of story I usually tell is that for my 12th birthday, I asked for this lucid dreaming device, and that's true. But actually, before then, I'd been having lucid dreaming because I used to wet the bed till I was really like quite old, like till about 6 or 7 years old. So not in the daytimes, but in the night times, I was still like wearing diapers, wearing nappies until I was like 6, 7 years old. So it was like chronic bedwetting. And I know at that age, I would have these dreams where I'd be in the dream and I'd know I was dreaming and I'd look and I'd know that I needed to pee. So needing to pee would kind of wake me up in the dream. And then I would think, oh, I should wake up and pee. But if I wake up, the sharks under the bed will get me. That was my fear, that there was these sharks under the bed and they like bit your ankles and then you fell and then they killed, they ate you. That was the kind of fantasy thing. So I've been, oh, I don't want to wake up because then the sharks will get me. So I'll just find like a toilet in the dream and pee.
Ah.
I would go around the dream and find a toilet and pee. And as soon as I started peeing in the toilet in the dream, the wetness would wake me up because, of course, peeing in a lucid dream is a trap. Don't do it. You pee in real life. And then I would wake up and I would kind of do this thing where I would like flip over the sheets and just go back to sleep, basically. That was my thing. So actually, I think it was bedwetting, chronic bedwetting that did it. There was no kind of major trauma that led to the bedwetting other than laziness. I remember one time, like I got sent to a child psychologist and they were like, why do you wet the bed? And I was like, I want to wake up in the middle of the night. Like, it's scary, it's dark. And they went, oh, so if we get a little light to keep the sharks away, will you wake up? And I was like, yeah, sure, like put a light on. So they put this light and I just stopped wetting the bed like overnight. So it was actually just laziness. So there you go, laziness and wetting the bed. It was my first entrance into lucid dreaming. But then I taught myself to lucid dream when I was like 15, 16. Started getting into like psychedelics and, well, not psychedelics, but like smoking weed and like looking at Buddhism and lucid dreaming. And it seemed like this cool way to like have this virtual reality simulation in your mind. You could do loads of cool stuff. So I got into it through that just for fun and was just like flying about, having sex with people and doing what I wasn't doing in the waking state because I was like 15. And then a couple of years later, I get into Buddhism. So I'd been reading about Buddhism since I was 15, but it seemed like too much hard work. I was like, no, that's like long. I need to like be a kid or kind of be a teenager. So I did. And then when I got into Buddhism properly a few years later, when I was like 18, 19, then they had this thing called dream yoga, which was like this spiritual practice of lucid dreaming. And I was thinking, oh, cool, I know how to do that, but I've never used it for any of this stuff. So then started training with these lamas and stuff, and then ended up living in a Buddhist center for like 8 years. And yeah, writing books about it and training with Tibetan teachers. And yeah, the rest is history, so they say.
Wow. Cool. Okay. So it's one of those things where, I mean, I feel like lucid dreaming kind of found you, like your path found you at a young age, and you were just like,
in retrospect, it seems like that.
Yeah.
In the moment, it never seems like that, does it? You
Yeah.
never kind of, those Hollywood moments, or very rarely happen consciously in the present. Sometimes you can have a feeling that I'm going to look back on this and think this is a Hollywood moment, but it's very rare, isn't it? Like most of the time it's in retrospect, like, whoa, if that hadn't happened, if I hadn't met that person, if that weird synchronicity hadn't occurred, this would have never happened. But yeah, looking back on it, I'm like, that's kind of weird. What 11-year-old kid asked for a lucid dreaming device for their birthday? Like, that's some weird kid stuff, right? So yeah, I think there's probably some past life thing going on, or who knows.
Yeah. So I want to dive into your story more and how lucid dreaming shifted for you and expanded for you. But before we do, can we get a little bit more into what lucid dreaming is for anyone who's new to this kind of dreaming?
Yeah, so I'm pretty strict with my definitions, not because I mean to denigrate any of the other things that lucid dreaming is sometimes thought of, but just it's really important to know what you're doing. Like lucid dreaming is not astral projection. Lucid dreaming is not prophetic dreaming. Lucid dreaming is not just very vivid dreaming. It's specifically a dream where you know that you're dreaming as the dream is happening. So if you have a fully lucid dream, you won't need to ask, was it lucid or not? You will know it is a definitively subjective experience of being asleep and going, oh shit, I'm in a dream right now. Whoa, this is so cool. And then often you wake up because it's so exciting. It's so cool. So people might have had that experience, or they might have had, much more common actually, is people waking up in their nightmares. So if people are if you've ever had a nightmare where you're in the nightmare and you're like, oh, I got to wake up, that was a lucid dream. The moment you acknowledge there was a possible place to wake up to, you acknowledge you were dreaming, right? So, yeah. And if that ever happens again, stay in the nightmare. Every time you wake from a nightmare, the nightmare necessarily has to replay. You know, a nightmare that you wake up from is like a therapy session cut short. Like if I was seeing my therapist over Zoom, which has happened a lot over the last couple of years, and let's say the Wi-Fi goes down and suddenly the connection is lost, he will be texting me, he will be WhatsApping me, he will be trying to get back on Zoom again, because he's like, the therapy session was cut short. I owe this to my client to make sure that the healing is complete in our 1 hour session. The nightmare is doing exactly the same thing. The reason your nightmares recur is not because you're being punished. It's not because you're being re-traumatized. Very, very rarely you could be, but most of the time it's not because you're being re-traumatized. It's because your internal therapist just really wants to finish the session. You know, nightmares can be a really good sign. It's a bitter medicine. Horrible. Nightmares are horrible. But in the same way, like a scab might be horrible when you cut your arm, but without a scab, no healing can occur. You know, a nightmare is like, yes, just like a scab. It creates a protective barrier over the wound so that healing can occur beneath the surface. That's like, yeah, like the definition of a nightmare and definition of a scab is like exactly the same.
Sure.
And just like scabs, they might be a bit gross and you might want to pick them. And when you pick them, you make them worse, just like with a nightmare. You know, if you self-identify with it, if you allow it to play into a victim complex, that's like picking at the scab, right? But if you allow it, if you can not pick it, but know that that scab is needed for healing to occur, then like, that's great. And the same with nightmares.
Yeah. So does it come to us in the night because our subconscious mind finally has time to get out in front of the conscious mind that's usually chattering during the day? Or why is this unfolding?
Like the only time it's got you as a captive audience, like all through the day, you're someone's called egocentric preference system, or that's what my teacher called it. The EPS, egocentric preference system, which is basically your ego mind, is constantly just chatting shit all day about this. And why I say it's chatting shit is because it is shit. It's creating the illusion of who we think we are. And we are so much bigger than this limited sense of self. So it's not we want to get rid of the ego mind. It plays a great role. We just don't want it in the driver's seat. It can ride shotgun. Like our higher self needs to be in the driving seat. Ego, brilliant. I need to be able to reply when someone calls out Charlie, right? We need the ego, but it shouldn't be driving. It should be in the passenger seat, not in the driver's seat. So yeah, when you go into REM sleep, that's like one of the few times in a 24-hour period where the ego mind is in the, is riding shotgun, you know, is not in the driver's seat. So suddenly the unconscious is like, oh, okay, now the therapy session can begin. So like REM dreaming sleep is like custom built for trauma integration. There are still people who say we don't know what dreaming is for. We absolutely know what dreaming is for. It's for memory reconsolidation and trauma integration. Like it may be for other things too. Yeah, we may not have completely nailed what all the aspects of what dreaming is for, but we know it's for those two things. So like when something traumatic happens, or even just anxious, you are supposed to dream about it. Like if someone tries to like steal your wallet or something when you're walking down the street, and that night you have a dream about it, or the next night you have a dream about it, or just within a 1 week of that, that's really good. That's like, oh, thank goodness. My inner therapist is working through that minor trauma quickly and effectively. If someone tried to steal my wallet and I hadn't had a dream about it, where the literal or kind of symbolically representing that within a week, not that I'd be worried, but I'd be like, oh, maybe that's gone a little bit deeper than I thought. You know, I haven't had the therapist hasn't thought it's a good time to bring it up yet. And often it is the deeper the trauma, in some cases, the kind of heavier it falls into the unconscious. It might take many years to come up. You know, people might 10, 20 years later start dreaming about a traumatic event and think they've been re-traumatized or re-triggered. They probably have been re-triggered. Something in their life has given that inner therapist the idea, like, you know what, are we ready to talk about this now? And it might be because you've done loads of work. You've done loads of inner work. You're so much more mature now. So now it's ready. Now, the unconscious, that inner therapist will never give you too much. It will only ever give you what you're ready for. So sometimes we're not so ready, and it can take a few years, but in almost all cases, the nightmares are a good sign.
It's really nice to hear that, because I don't feel like, at least I'll speak for myself, I feel like I haven't heard many people be like, this is a good thing, stay in it, allow yourself to be there. And
so weird, dude. It's like, I mean, I totally agree with it. Totally agree. And it's just so weird that people aren't talking like this. All the science points in that direction, but just no one knows about sleep science. Especially no one looks at nightmares. It's like the most unpopular thing to look at, right? Who wants to spend their days looking at nightmares?
Yeah.
And yet researchers who do brilliant research. But who's the first person we go to when a sleep problem comes up? We go to our doctor. Yeah. And I know my stepsister has just graduated as a doctor after 6 years of training. Now, this may be different in other countries, but the UK's got a pretty solid medical system. In her 6 years of training, she had 2 hours on sleep. 2 hours in 6 years.
That's wild.
That's crazy. Now, she actually sent me that 2-hour presentation because it was online. So she kind of let me check it out. Really good presentation. Yeah. But 2 hours in 6 years, when we know that 1 in 10 of the complaints people go to their local doctor for is linked to sleep.
Wow.
And let's say most doctors didn't finish their training this year. They finished their training 10 years, 20 years ago, when sleep science was in its infancy. Yeah. So most of the time you go to a doctor, or you go to just any well-meaning person, tell them you're having nightmares, say, well, let's medicate you. Yeah. There's something wrong with you. Nightmares are bad. Nightmares are not bad. And yeah, one of my little missions is to really get that out, spread the word on that, because we have a lot of shame, especially in the spiritual community. People are scared to admit they have nightmares because they think it shows that they are kind of unintegrated, or that they haven't done the work, or all these kind of bullshit limits we place on ourselves. Actually, quite the opposite. In Buddhism, there are certain practices, like advanced tantric practices, that when you're doing them, nightmares, you're kind of like supposed to have nightmares. Oh, that's wrong. Not supposed to have nightmares, but if you there's a certain purification practice where if you were doing it, and in the months that you're doing it, you have nightmares, that's seen as progress, because it shows that the purification mantra you're doing is leading to purification of karma. Now, how do nightmares purify karma? Because from a karmic point of view, anytime you experience suffering, you exhaust negative karma. So if you have loads of nightmares, well, you're really suffering in the nightmare because you think it's real, right? We think our dreams are real. You wake up, oh, I've got a terrible nightmare. From a karmic point of view, that was brilliant. You just exhausted shitloads of, sorry, I'm swearing quite a lot, but it's just I'd like to say it's a British thing. It's not, it's a me thing. I apologize for that.
Same, it's okay.
You can go beep, you can beep it out. Yeah, from a Buddhist point of view, you're actually exhausting loads of negative karma. So nightmares are seen as, oh, brilliant, nice. You had a really, really hectic nightmare. Cool. You exhausted loads of negative karma.
Wow. Okay.
That's there's a tantric Buddhist view. That's kind of,
sure.
I know that might seem far out, but it actually links perfectly with what we now know about medical science, just without the karma bit.
Yeah. I mean, well, when you take away, you talked about identifying or victimizing ourselves when we had nightmares. And I feel like for so long, that's what I would do. And now, as I've shifted and my nightmares are shifting, I come out of it and be like, okay, that was interesting. And you can look at it from a perspective that's not why was I having that? And I don't want that. And pushing it away, like you said. And it's nice to welcome that in, welcome that change in, welcome that suffering. And I've never heard that. That's mind blowing that every time we're suffering, we're exhausting negative karma. I feel like everyone on their inner journey, spiritual journey needs to hear that, because I could have definitely heard that 3 years ago and been like, cool.
Yeah, and then we can flip it on its head and be quite proud of our nightmares. Oh, cool, okay, nice one. You had a good nightmare, brilliant.
Yeah. Okay. So for you, you're 15, you're 16, you're using lucid dreaming to hooking up with celebrities and all of that fun stuff. When you get into Buddhism, how did that shift? And you just talked about it a little bit, but how did that shift your personal experience with how you were lucid dreaming, and how did that affect your waking world?
So it's actually a little bit more nuanced than I presented there. But like all stories, right? There's always nuance to them. It was kind of actually the lucid dream that led to Buddhism and vice versa. Because when I was 17, the one time I did use lucid dreams for something that was really helpful was I had this drugs overdose and a full-on near-death experience and really bad nightmares. Then I used lucid dreaming to cure those nightmares. Overnight, the nightmares stopped. It took me a few weeks. So I've been having the nightmares for about 4 months. started trying to work through lucid dreaming about 3 weeks. And then on the kind of third or fourth attempt, managed to not only get lucid in the nightmare, that's the first step, but the second step is not to bail. It's all good getting lucid. That was quite easy because nightmares are easy to get lucid and there's loads of stuff to prove you're dreaming, right? There's monsters and stuff. But I just had to bail the first few times. But I think the third or fourth time I managed to stay in it and kind of really face the fear. And then the nightmares stopped. And I was like, whoa, they literally stopped overnight. I woke up and they never came back again, that particular, PTSD nightmare. So I think it was then that I saw the potential of it. And then I started getting to Buddhism, and then the dream yoga thing came up. And I was like, oh yeah, you can totally use it for integration of trauma. I did it myself. So those kind of two things met. And then, then I just started finding kind of anyone who was teaching it, which back then wasn't a lot of people. But eventually I found Rob Nairn, who's a teacher from Zimbabwe, and Lama Yeshe Rinpoche, who's my Buddhist master. And by that time, I'd kind of read loads of books. I got really into it and was reading everything about this dream yoga thing and lucid dreaming and all this kind of stuff. So by my kind of early 20s, I'd read a lot. But then when I started the one-on-one training with them, like one sentence of advice from Lama Yeshe was worth like every book I'd ever read, because there's book learning and there's practical learning. It's like learning to dance. Like imagine if you've been learning to dance from like a book and then you finally like 10 years later go to a dance class, they're like, just drop your shoulder, and you're like, whoa, that completely changed the way I'm moving. I just dropped my shoulder, or my weight's over my knees or whatever. Is just one little thing like that. It was like that. Like when I started getting the one-on-one tuition, one-on-one tuition, it's not really called that, but I guess that's the equivalent of what it is. Then stuff started going, getting like progressing very, very quickly.
Yeah. Okay. So this is kind of a swerve, but I can imagine that people who are listening are like, okay, I have never lucid dreamed. I have never been aware or conscious in my dreams. How do I do that? Let's dive into how someone who's a beginner can start to do that before we get into the conversation further, so they'll have a general understanding of what this looks like.
Okay, so that's quite a big one, because like there's enough to literally fill 4 books on that. But there is something which are available to buy. There is something some kind of basic things, which are the 4 Ds.
Okay.
So the first one is like dream recall. So training your mind to remember your dreams. That's the first thing, because unless you remember your dreams, you're unlikely to have lucid dreams. How do you do that? First thing, know that it's possible and know that you are dreaming. Like people listening who think I don't dream, everybody dreams. There's no way to stop the human brain from dreaming other than a stroke or a heavy head injury. And even in those cases, actually, within a couple of weeks, you start dreaming again, because like dreaming's so vital to the brain function. So you are dreaming, but you probably just don't remember your dreams. So fall asleep with that really strong intention to remember your dreams. Sometimes that can just be enough. Then when you do remember a dream, write it down. In fact, even if you don't remember your dream, write down, I can't remember my dreams. Get into the habit of like morning journaling. Like as soon as you wake up, get into the habit, you're going to write down your nighttime experience, which for the first few nights might be, I can't remember anything, but then maybe on night 2 or 3, oh shit, actually, I remember something. I remember a dream. It was kind of had a certain feeling to it. Okay, write down the feeling. And eventually within a week or so, you might be writing loads and loads and loads, but you don't need to put more than like 5 or 10 minutes down. Why do we write down our dreams? To spot patterns. So it's not actually about interpreting the dreams, although that can be quite fun, but it's just it's completely different practice. It's about spotting patterns. So you write down your dream, you'll start to see, oh yeah, I always dream about like being back at school, or I often dream of my dead grandma, or I always have those dreams about that place we used to go to as a kid. And you start to see those patterns and you realize, well, look, the next time I experience being back at school, I must be dreaming. Or the next time I see my grandma, I must be dreaming. So you're creating these lucidity triggers. And they happen subconsciously. I mean, you can write them out if you want to make it really conscious, but just acknowledging them, create the trigger, create the link. And if you do that enough, you'll start that, like the next time you're in that dream, it's so weird. You'll be like, let's say it's your dead grandma. You'll be in this dream, your dead grandma appears, and you have this weird feeling, almost like a deja vu. That's how it comes on. Like you'll be in the dream and you get this deja vu feeling of like, I swear there's something I'm supposed to remember when I see my grandma, like such a weird feeling. And then it creeps up on you and you're like, whoa, she's my dream sign. I'm actually dreaming right now. So yeah, that's the third one, is dream signs, like spotting these kind of patterns that emerge in your dreams. And then the fourth one is actually should have been number one. It's the kind of, so let's say it's the first D, is a dream plan. So planning what you want to do in your lucid dream. That's the most important thing. Going in with a plan of action. You can always change it, but like if the quickest way to have a lucid dream is have a good reason why. Like the how is less important. Have a good reason why. So if you're just like, oh, I want to have a lucid dream because it's kind of cool, it's going to be a long journey. You'll get there, but we're talking like weeks, months, maybe more. If you have a really good reason why, I want to go into the lucid dream to heal my trauma, or I want to go into the lucid dream to do my spiritual practice, or I want to go in the lucid dream to train for death, or I want to go in the lucid dream to heal my inner child. Like, give your psyche a good reason, like, and it's going to open up the door for you. There is a way to get in without that, just by knocking, which is like the techniques. But if you had a good dream plan, it's like knocking and stating your intent. Like someone knocks on my door, just a random dude knocks on my door. If they knock enough, I'll probably open it and be like, yo, what do you want?
Yeah.
But if I hear a knock on the door right now and someone says, knock, knock, I've come to give you something you really love. I've come to send you loads of healing. I've come to do something really beneficial for you. I'll be like, dude, come on in.
Yeah.
So that's like the dream plan. The techniques are like knocking on the door. The dream plan's like knocking and stating your intent. And if the intent is one of healing, the door will open.
Wow.
So that's the most important one.
Wow. How quickly do you think that healing trauma in this state, in a lucid dream, in our dream state, how much quicker do you think it is than trying to do it from the ego, from the mind?
It's not necessarily quicker, like, because it can take like weeks and months to get to the point where you stabilize the lucid dream enough to go in and work on trauma. And then in other cases, you can do it in a week, like within a few days. I mean, we did a thing with the Institute of Noetic Sciences in the summer. We had 55 people, 100% PTSD. So they had to have PTSD to get on the trial. And I was like, mate, we might not even have any lucid dreams in the 1 week study. Like, I might just need to be helping these people to get to sleep, let alone having lucid dreams. But because they had a good reason why, they were all there because they'd had trauma. It was resistant to other treatments of PTSD. That's why they were there. And there was a guy presenting with another option and teaching them how to do it. And within a week, we had like, there were so many healing lucid dreams that happened that week. When we checked the average PTSD score at the end of the 7 days, it had dropped so low, it was beneath the PTSD threshold. It was like, you don't have PTSD anymore. 3 weeks later, the follow-up study had dropped 1 point below that. That was remarkable. And we just presented the results literally a couple of days ago, actually, and then they'll be published in 2 months' time. Wow. And that was really, really big. So in some cases, like 1 week, you can do this, you can integrate trauma and it's done. That was a special case because they had me like every single day for 7 days, like with them and with the psychotherapist with them. It was like an intense period. But that's one example. Other people I know, they might be coming to my workshops for years. And then like on like their second year of coming, they might finally have that breakthrough and have this amazing dream and work with a trauma or wounded part themselves. So it completely depends. I mean, there are loads of other ways you can work with trauma too. You know, hypnotherapy, shamanic journeying, psychedelics, meditation, all these other things are way more accessible than lucid dreaming because you don't have to be asleep when you do it, right? Like hypnotherapy you could go to like every day. But the depth of access to the unconscious that you get through lucid dreaming is unsurpassed. If you think of this idea of like the iceberg of consciousness, is this just audio or video too? Can people see my hands?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So if you're listening on audio, I'll tell you what I'm doing. I'm creating a triangle of kind of like an iceberg, that classic iceberg of consciousness. Very outdated, actually, an imperfect metaphor, but we're going to use it for this. And you've got like the top 10% is the conscious mind, and then the bottom 90% is the unconscious, and then the ocean in which it floats, we can think of as the collective unconscious, all this kind of stuff. So when you have an experience of those aforementioned techniques like hypnotherapy, shamanic journeying, psychedelics, meditation, you're taking a strand of the conscious mind down into the subconscious or the shallow unconscious, right? And it's brilliant. You can do amazing work through that. I think they're all brilliant. But when you have a lucid dream, because you're asleep and because you simply can't get more unconscious than asleep, that's a fact. You're taking a strand of the conscious and you're going boom right to the bottom of the iceberg. Like you're next to the bit of the iceberg where it meets the collective. You are like as deep as you can possibly go. So research has found that lucid dreaming, although it's less accessible, once you do get there, only one lucid dream is needed in some cases.
Wow.
So it's kind of horses for courses. So I would say do it all if you can.
Yeah.
You know, if you're into hypnotherapy and shamanic journey and yoga nidra and psychedelics, if that works for you, go for it. And do lucid dreaming, or just do lucid dreaming. You know, it's not like the best. I'm not saying it's not the best. It's no better than those other modalities. It's just about knowing, what horse to use for what course.
Yeah. And I feel like when I was in the beginning of my journey, and, you know, I kind of fucked with everything from hypnotherapy to, you know, meditation, psychedelics, all of the things. But I remember in the beginning of my journey, the only things that I could really do, because I had so much trauma and healing to do, were the things that were easily accessible to me. And I feel that, not that it's easily accessible to lucid dream, but we all sleep. So in that sense, if I had known about lucid dreaming, it's free. I can do it on my own terms. I can really dive deep within my own self. And I think that that's why just that accessibility aspect of it is really powerful. And it's amazing. I mean, it's so crazy because it's seemingly so obvious that something we all do for, what is it, a third of our lives, we end up sleeping, something like that.
Yeah.
That you're treating PTSD with this thing we're all doing anyways. And it's just so cool to see. So just like a little shout out to you that you're bringing awareness to this modality that everyone can do. So just a little kudos to you. Gratitude for you bringing it into. It's funny because actually until this moment, I followed along with your work for a long time, but until this moment, it brought me back to like years ago. I heard you do a talk and I was listening on a walk, and I didn't realize until just now that I learned like a while back from you. And now I'm like, oh my God.
Cool.
Yeah. But so let's talk about, so say someone starts to lucid dream and they do find that they just keep bailing in the dream because they're afraid, and that's totally normal. Would you say that consistency, continuing to show up, is the best way to face that fear head on and not pull yourself out of the dream?
Yeah. So every time you have a lucid dream and wake up again, you have proof I woke up. Nothing bad happened.
Yeah.
So there's that. Second thing is ask yourself, what are you afraid of? Now, most people are afraid of threats to their physical and mental integrity. So wounds, violence, death. I'm in the lucid dream. I'm scared. I feel a threat to my physical and mental integrity. Where is my body? To sleep in bed. Probably the safest place it is in any 24-hour period for many people. Obviously, for some trauma survivors, the bed was not a safe place. But for many people, in a 24-hour period, the bed is the safest place. You know, walk down the street, you could get hit by a car, you could be in a terrorist accident, you could trip over a log or something. You know, in your bed, your body is pretty safe. So like remind yourself, where's my body? Oh, it's in my bedroom. It's like totally safe. So this body I have now that I'm afraid for its physical integrity, or being wounded or having violence committed against it or dying, it cannot die. I have no body. This is mentally created. So that's the first thing. So my body is fine. You ain't going to get any physical, like you don't kind of wake up with bruises after a lucid dream or anything like that. So physically, I'm fine. Mentally, where am I? I'm in my own mind. Okay, so what if I go mad? Well, have there been any reports of anybody ever going mad through lucid dreaming? Probably if you Google, you might find some. Very, very, very rare though. You know, I'm pushing like 15 years of doing this. Never had anybody do damage to themselves mentally or physically through lucid dreaming. Has it happened? Could it happen? Yeah, anything can happen. Everything probably has happened at some point. Have I seen it? Never. Have I heard of any research that presented that? Never. Would I be allowed to work with highly traumatized populations like veterans with PTSD, where the whole group are card-carrying PTSD survivors or sufferers or people working with PTSD? No, there's no way. So this is pretty safe. You know, far more likely to get re-traumatized actually in a one-on-one waking state therapy session, if the therapist is not holding the space absolutely tenderly, than you are in a lucid dream. Worst that can happen in a lucid dream, boom, you wake up. There is an ejector switch. There's no ejector switch in the waking state if you go into a panic attack. because we all know you're just stuck in panic, right? Until you regulate and ground and all those amazing techniques we can do. So remind yourself of that. Like lucid dreaming is safe. Like if you are going to integrate trauma anywhere, lucid dreaming is a pretty good place to do it because of where it happens, the REM dreaming sleep state, which was custom built by Mother Nature to integrate trauma. Like the evolutionary REM threat detection, REM dreaming evolutionary threat theory, something like that. One of those orders. There's a belief that the reason that humans came to be top predator on the planet was not only our ability to dream, but specifically our ability to have nightmares. Because like, if you could be having nightmares every night about like escaping the saber-tooth tiger, fighting the saber-tooth tiger, throwing a rock at the saber-tooth tiger, hiding from it, but your buddy in the cave next door was not, like 2 weeks later, if you're out in the savannah and a saber-tooth tiger appears, who's going to survive and pass on their genes? The dude who's been like dreaming about it all night. So there's actually an evolutionary theory that not only was REM dreaming sleep for dreams, but actually for nightmares. So you're in a space that Mother Nature built for this. It is the safest place to do the work. So those would be good things to remind yourself if you keep bailing. Yeah. And the second one is just logically, like if you bail from a nightmare, it has to come back because your mind loves you, not to punish you, not to prove itself right, not because like you've done something wrong, the opposite. Because your inner therapist is like, dude, you keep on leaving the therapy session. I'm sorry, but I just have to finish this.
Yeah.
So you want the therapy session to end? You want the nightmares to end? Stay in them. It's a paradox, but it's the truth.
Nightmares get a bad, or at least I had a bad rap around nightmares. And it's just wild to hear like the evolutionary standpoint of that. Like that makes so much sense. And I just, it's just another thing to add to the list of why was I never taught this?
Why would neither of us taught this at school, right? Even the way we talk about nightmares, like we use that in the English language anyway, we use the term nightmare as a derogatory term. Like you've had like a friend or someone who's being really hard, oh, they're a bloody nightmare. Or how was that date? Oh, it was a nightmare. It's like nightmare basically means something terrible.
Yeah.
And we've done the same with dreams, actually. Oh, you're a dreamer in your dreams. Yeah, keep dreaming. Again, we use even the term dream as some sort of fantasy. It's not real. It's not worthy. It has no self-regard. We need to completely rewire the way we look at dreams and especially nightmares. And I think it's happening. There's a big kind of revolution in sleep awareness going on. And yeah, I mean, my mission by the time I leave this incarnation is to spread this and make sure people know about it, or as many who will benefit from it anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. So another thing that comes into mind for me is, and I genuinely have no idea about this, but so let's say we've been doing all the work in our waking state, and then we're lucid dreaming to treat ourselves in another form of therapy and bring up trauma very intentionally and heal it and everything. Full circle, can we use lucid dreaming to manifest, or do we by default manifest easier because we've been doing the work in our dreams? How does lucid dreaming affect manifestation?
So I think before we get to manifestation, it affects just how you interact with the world. Like if you spent your night times literally hugging monsters and kind of like integrating your childhood wounds and flying through the freaking sky like Superman, like the next day when your boss is giving you hell at work, it's like, dude, that's nothing to me. I just embraced a monster last night. So your boss giving you hell, your stress resilience levels, boy, they're big. You've trained yourself, you're mentally, internally to deal with like heavy, heavy stuff. So I think in that way, it changes the way you view the world and the way you interact with people. And as far as manifestation, yeah, I mean, in the like Toltec tradition, Toltec Mexica, which is the ancient shamanic tradition of actually what then was called Mexico and is now called Mexico. The Spanish invaders changed the names of a lot of places, but the Mexica were the people, Mexica means the people of the navel of the moon. And Mexico kept its name. So actually when someone today says they're Mexican, they're saying I'm a person of the navel of the moon. And to be a Mexican is actually not based on location, it's based on practice. But anyway, so the Mexica, they have this idea that you dream it first. So the reason that they learned lucid dreaming was because, like, if you're having loads of dreams where like loads of bad luck, this is their terminology, not mine, lots of bad luck is befalling you, and negative manifestations are coming to pass in the dream state, then you're basically planting the seed for that to happen in the waking state. So they're like, well, dude, if we can get lucid, and then like anytime something negative happens, you turn it into a flower, literally, in the lucid dream. Or anytime something kind of bad luck, if you want to use that term, occurs, you flip it and change it into something really good luck, then you're planting those seeds for future events. Even things like, the teacher who I work with in that tradition, brilliant guy called Sergio Magana. And he, it's kind of different how in the shamanic tradition they use lucid dreaming compared to Buddhism. Like, I don't think it's a very kind of Buddhisty thing to do, but it's a very Sergio thing to do. He wanted like a celebrity student. He was like, you know what, to improve my profile so I can get my work out to more people. So the motivation was good. It was to get his work out to more people. He's like, if I get like a celebrity student, like that would be super cool. And so he used his lucid dreams to do that. So in the lucid dreams, he was doing this certain practice with stars. Because again, you work with metaphor here. So he was using like things like with the Pleiades and different star systems in the lucid dream to plant these seeds for a star, as in a celebrity, to appear in his life. Now, I was with him on tour when he was doing those practices, so I know this is not bullshit. Within 6 months, and now I can speak freely about it because they're working together, Michelle Rodriguez, who was in all the Fast and Furious movies and was in Avatar and has been loads of stuff, and I count her as a friend myself. She's a wonderful, wonderful woman who Sergio introduced me to. She appeared in his life. She saw his stuff. She wanted an indigenous Mexican teacher because of her connection to the lineages. And they started working together and doing retreats together. And now I think they've done like an online course together. Who knows? I mean, maybe it was just coincidence, but I was there when he was doing those practices to plant a star, and then pretty much one of the most famous human beings in Hollywood literally appears and is like, oh, I'm doing your teaching. Can I go and retreat with you? So I don't know. Maybe coincidence, but it happens. And they're very happily working together now. Oh, they're making a video game. That's what they're doing. They're making a video game. So they have an idea that the way to get these teachings to the younger generation is to create a video game. So a bit like in that film, what's the Pixar movie where they've got all the Day of the Dead stuff?
I know what you're talking about, but I can only
where the kid's looking for his grandma and the memories going. And I think Coco, that's what it's called.
Yes.
In Coco, they've got all the archetypes from the Toltec and all the gifts and stuff. A video game, including those ancient archetypes as a way to kind of plant the seed in the unconscious of young people in a very positive way, that they might manifest those power animals in their own life to kind of empower young Hispanic, all young people. So they're making this video game.
That is,
and that is a lucid dream, if you believe that, which I personally do.
Yeah, that's such a good idea. And it's funny you say that. As an aside, have you ever heard of Zelda Breath of the Wild?
Zelda video game?
Yeah. Okay, so basically the new one that came out, that was like, oh my God, it put the video game people up in arms. I'm not a gamer, but I love Zelda. Long story short, these towers pop up, and I was in meditation one day as I was like, after I was playing, and it was like the towers that pop up throughout the game are the character's consciousness coming to life. And I was like, oh my God, like I made this connection. Maybe it was just me, but it's cool because it really does make you think, even if you're not noticing like what you're thinking, like, I wonder what that's equivalent to in my life. So anyways, that to be said, that,
you know the link between video games and lucid dreaming?
No.
We've done like all these studies. So any like parents listening, this will probably not be what they want to hear if they've got kids who spend hours gaming, but like hardcore gamers, so like 6 to 8 hours a day, have loads of lucid dreams, like way higher than average, way higher, because they're spending 6 to 8 hours a day as an avatar, and they know that they're in a game, but they are inhabiting another body in a game, just like a lucid dream. You're dreaming, but you're entering into the dream as if it were real. So basically you have loads of lucid dreams if you play loads of video games, especially kind of the immersive VR ones. So with the headset, the Oculus Rift and stuff like that. So obviously if you can make a video game that is full of really positive conscious stuff rather than killing people, even better. And then you'll still get all the free lucid dreams as well.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, I believe that. I'm rereading the Twilight series right now. And I like when I'm reading,
What do you call dreams?
or just, yep. Last night I was just
Yeah.
having a dream where I was like talking as one of the vampires and all this stuff was going on. And I was like, maybe I should not read the like killing scenes before bed.
Well, it gives you good dream signs, doesn't
Yeah.
it? You
Yeah.
know, it's
Yeah.
like those. I don't think I made that clear. The third D is dream sign, by the way. I don't think I made that totally clear. Yeah. So if you read that kind of fiction before bed, like you're going to dream about it. It's going to be in your unconscious. And if you're dreaming about vampires and people flying stuff, you're more likely to go, wait, that dude's flying. Ah, I must be dreaming.
Ah.
So similar to video games, nowhere near in the same percentage, but I think it was like 10 to 15% impact on your dreams, like reading fiction before bed, especially like imaginary fiction, things like Lord of the Rings and stuff like that, like 15% increase of fantastical things appearing in your dreams. So that's quite a lot, you know. It wasn't as much as video games, but still.
Yeah. Oh, so cool. Okay. I feel like we could talk for forever about all of this, but I do want to ask you where people can start with your books and how they can get into your content specifically. And if you could tell us where to find everything, where you're at, all of the details about everything that you do and offer.
Sure. So just charliemorley.com. And I'm on Instagram, Charlie Morley Lucid Dreaming Teacher, on Facebook, all that. And yeah, I got loads of stuff this year, finally doing in-person retreats. So I think the first one is in Jordan in May, and then I'm in the US a couple of times in December in California, and Halloween, I'm doing Omega in New York State. And then I'm in Italy and France and Belgium and Scotland and Prague. So yeah, loads of stuff.
Cool.
And there's the lucid dreaming retreats and workshops. And then there's the stuff based on the new book, which is all the stress and trauma affected sleep stuff. And then there's some of the shadow integration stuff too. There's also online courses for all of those things too. So you can do like online live with me, like a live workshop, or there are pre-recorded courses. Like there's the MindValley Lucid Dreaming course, a 6-week Lucid Dreaming course, the shadow integration online course is really, really good. I never pushed that enough, actually. It's a really, really well-made course. So yeah, basically loads of stuff.
Yeah. And I was looking at
I have these free monthly things too.
Oh, cool.
Like every month I do a free drop-in workshop, which you can find on my website too.
Okay, amazing. Yeah, I was looking at your website and mostly everything's on there, right? That like everything you just said, the links are there. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. That will be in the show notes. And I also like, for you, is it kind of full circle that and I know I touched on this earlier, but like as a little kid, you were asking for a lucid dreaming machine and you were doing all of this dreaming, and now you're the dream guy. You're helping people change their lives by this, and you're touring and stuff. Is that a dream come into reality for you?
Yeah, it is totally nuts. It's like literally I travel around the world and people pay me to talk about something I would do for free. Like I would literally do this for free. And I think that's the thing, isn't it, with work? Like, oh, would you do it for free? And like most of the time you're like, no, I wouldn't do it for free. I need some paper for doing this hard work. The lucid dreaming stuff, honestly, especially the stuff with veterans, I do for free anyway. But yeah, I mean, I love this. This is something I've been geeked out about since I was like 12. And now this is what I get to do. So I'm just so grateful. And it feels like a kind of a duty to live joyfully, because I'm in the rare position of like, yeah, just found my path. Like this is my thing. Like this is what I do. And and it's helpful to people. And yeah, I love doing it.
Yeah. So good. So inspiring. Well, Charlie, thank you so much for coming on the show. Like I said, all of your information will be in the show notes so everyone can check you out. I will try to come see you when you're in America. I'm in Denver, so not far from California. So I'll see if I can get out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But thank you so much. I really appreciated having you on.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.